Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and in today's video, we'll be doing a review for Hearts That Cut by Kika Hatsupalo. I was just recording my mid-year book freakout tag video not too long ago, and in that I mentioned that it was really nostalgic feeling for me because that was one of my very first videos. The first book in this series, The Threads That Bind, was one of my first reviews on the channel. In fact, it might be my first review on the channel. And so I felt honor-bound, duty-bound to read through Hearts That Cut and give you my honest feelings on it. At the end of my Threads That Bind video, I mentioned that I felt like it had growing pains. I felt like we had a very clunky start with a lot of the world building, and that hopefully with all that out of the way, the second book could just focus on the plot and focus on the characters and not have to do as much stressing with the world building. And that didn't happen. Unfortunately, the sequel is mired in just as much of an attempt at this world building that we got in the first book. None of it's bad. Like the concepts are very cool. The powers are very neat. The concepts in the story are very cool. The locations they go to are neat. I just think that it's all rather clunkily introduced, and it still feels like too much. This is a world where there are Otherborn. They are individuals who receive powers based on the gods. And in the case of the main trio, well, the main character we're following, Io, she is one of the Fates. She has an older sister that can create new threads named Thais. She has a middle sister named Ava who is able to like loosen the bonds between people, and Io is a cutter. She can cut the threads between people, and basically that amounts to cutting their affections towards things, their attraction toward things. That concept alone is very cool, and I feel like the strongest points in this book are very similar to the strong points in the first book, when we have Io confronting her sisters, dealing with the family grief and the family trauma that they've endured, their very strained sibling relationship, and the expectations of their responsibility for the family versus their responsibility and expectations of themselves. That was all very cool. That was well over halfway into the book. The beginning of the book is another very slow build-up, and I feel like I'm able to better articulate why it doesn't work for me. Io is a detective. In fact, she directly lets you know on 2 occasions that she is a very good detective, and that's how you know someone's a good detective, is they just directly tell you. It really irked me. It was a small detail in the book, but I don't think that's something direct characterization should be used for. Direct characterization should be used for physical characteristics. What does a person look like? What do they sound like? That kind of thing. Not, oh, I knew I would solve this case because I'm a very good detective, and then not even 5 pages later doubling down on that and saying, oh, I know I'm a good detective. She doesn't do a lot of detecting in this book. She doesn't do a lot of investigations. There's not a lot of putting pieces together, but it's still presented in that style of you're going along with this investigation. The issue is you are just being told what Io is figuring out. We are not given enough information about the way the world works. Io doesn't even know the way the world works. She admits at one point that she doesn't know all the different other users, other power users that are out there. Because we have this world building that is admittedly very cool, but way overwrought. We have too many power users who we have to talk about how their powers work because they're vastly different. The one connection they have is their eyes turn different colors when they're using the power, but everything from that point on is completely different. We have to talk about what they see through their eyes. So Io is able to see the quilt, which allows her to see the fate threads connecting different people. We have to go into descriptions about when this power user uses their power, what do they see? When this power user uses theirs, what do they see? And we bounce between a bunch of them without any really standing out and without any really developing beyond Io herself, even though their involvement in the plot is very significant. It just seems like we're being thrown these things one after another and not slowing down and not really building out this this world building and this magic system, to where at points it just feels like we're being thrown things just because it's a convenient plot. Oh yeah, this person deals with emotion. Sure, like let's just get him in there. He can soothe everybody in a scene because that's his whole deal. It's too much. Because we're not able to grasp onto the world building here, we're not able to predict where the story is going to go. And so it being framed as a mystery, it being framed as an investigation is frustrating. The beginning of this book just feels like it's spinning its wheels because you can't tell as a reader where the story is going. You don't have enough information about how the world works to do that. And so you're just waiting for Io to figure out what's going on. And she's making incremental progress through the first 150, 200 pages. But eventually that gets rather tedious. Once the investigation part stops and we start getting into the actual conflict of the story, it does ramp up and it does become very interesting. The world building here is something I've never seen before, and there's a very cool element of the end of this book that I thought was just really crazy and really fun. But I don't know if it's worth reading 2 books to get to that. And so yeah, it's a tough one to discuss because the beginning really felt slow moving. Not only were we introducing these new power users, we're also introducing this new part of the world and the way that it's been messed up by this calamity that happened earlier that we really didn't focus on that much in the first book, but ends up being really important in the second. And then we're also introducing these animals, these creatures that they're having to fight against, and throwing them in real quick, throwing a fight scene in with them just to get a beat of action in the beginning, because I really do feel like they're aware that it's dragging at the start. So they have that action beat in the middle, or about a fourth of the way through, just to get you some sort of movement, some sort of action. The rest is just plotting. Io following a person, and then they end up getting away, following him to another town. They end up getting away. She stumbles into some allies that she was looking for. A lot of stuff just tends to happen around Io. There are 2 points in the story where Io does some genuine detectiving. One is she's looking at this board of all these missing people, and she's able to figure out the connection between them, which again, we're not able to surmise in any way. So we're just sitting around waiting for Io to figure out and tell us, because we don't know how the world works. For example, we would not know that last names being different is not that big of an indicator of familial relationship in this world. But Io knows that, and she just throws it out as soon as she figures out the connection between the characters. And then one other point where she is trying to narrow down where this person went, and based on the clothing and based on different points in the town, she's able to narrow it down to she's probably in this location, and she ends up being right. So 2 points of actual detective work in the story, neither of which you as a reader can anticipate in any way. And again, it feels like we're just waiting around for Io to figure it out. Let me talk about the end. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free, but I really do think that the end ticks all the boxes that it needs to do. This is a duology, so this is the end of the series. It has a very clever idea about the world, a concept I've not seen in anything before, and felt genuinely surprising and unique to me. That is completely separate from Io and her entire story. It's not really linked into her investigation, really. It doesn't have anything to do with her. It would exist, independent of her. And so because that doesn't have the tie-in, it doesn't really feel like a good payoff. She does figure out something about the big reveal toward the end, but it's such a minor thing. And I feel like there were all these other people there. Someone was bound to figure it out. I can't push the rating up higher just because it had a strong finish. I am giving Hearts That Cut a 3 out of 5. I feel like the world building is overwrought, interesting, but too much. Characters are strong in points when they're dealing with relationships that were established in the first book. Some of the relationship things do break down at the end where people are switching allegiances for seemingly no reason and like reforging bonds for no reason just because it's convenient for the plot. There's a breakdown at the end of the story from a relationship standpoint, and then it has a great ending. I love the way that it wraps up, but I can't recommend reading 2 books just to get a cool concept for a world. Those are my quick thoughts on Hearts That Cut. Now I want to hear from you. Have you read Threads That Bind or Hearts That Cut? What were your thoughts on it? Tell me down in the comments what your thoughts are. Hope you enjoyed this look at Hearts That Cut. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.